Fixed.
Whatever it was, it's fixed.
Yeah, it's gone now.
Well, we have a quorum. Should we start the meeting?
Yes, let's go ahead and start.
All right. I'd like to call the meeting of the General Plan Working Group for Thursday, March 3rd. And we'll take roll call. Art Darden.
He's here.
I'm here.
Okay. Mary Ellen Lamothe.
Here.
Okay. Emmett Holstlander.
Here.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Tom Donnelly is not here. Edwin is not here. Lisa Heckman.
Here.
Okay, I'm here. Lisa Duke is here. Rick Dahl. Yep.
Here.
Judith Adamson is here.
Here.
All right. Public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening from anybody? Lisa, is your hand raised? No? Okay. All right, we don't have any public comment. We'll go on to discussion items. 3.1, update on community outreach.
Chair Nick Prokopis is going to bring up a presentation that we'll be walking you through.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, go ahead and hit the next slide. So these are the items we're going to be discussing this evening, the outreach, community outreach efforts in general, the upcoming March meeting, the key themes of the general plan, and then at the end, we'll talk about next steps and also have an open discussion of any items that the general plan working group wishes to bring up. Go ahead, Nick, next slide. We have been working a little bit behind the scenes with Edwin Okamura and Lisa Duke and Art Darden. Thank you for the time that you all provided to us. And what we did was refine a strategy for outreach. And really, it's based on some principles we've been discussing. We just wanted to explain to you, and I believe that you've received the revised community outreach approach that would have been sent out by Christine after the packet. But really, there's a few principles that we're looking at. One is we want to be approaching community members through lots of venues. We know that there's Facebooks that have lots and lots of community members on them. And in many cases, they're going to be common to each different list, whether it's fire, police, or city. What we intend to do is pace our outreach and messages so that you'll see a notification on Facebook or Nextdoor or something every 1 or 2 days as we lead up to the community meetings. We are trying to create what's sometimes referred to as a sticky approach, but kind of a hook that will get people to come out to the meetings. We want them to understand how important the general plan is. It's inherently kind of a dry subject. I got to tell you, I'm a planner, but I recognize that wading through documents is not necessarily very exciting, but it's really important. And we want to convey that to members of the community and make sure they understand how they can help to guide this process. We absolutely want to make this easy. So we heard some concerns about how MindMixer surveys are working. The fact that some folks were, it wasn't real obvious how you were supposed to work through the survey or how you were supposed to add comments. So we want to, as much as possible, make it easy for community members to participate. And then we want this to evolve over time. So this isn't a one and done kind of messaging. We need to keep the community engaged throughout the process. Nick, next slide. we thought about the different ways we can touch the community, and this is really, how do we reach out? We've already produced a print flyer. It's a half-page print flyer that would be appropriate for leaving in stores, at City Hall, community organizations, anywhere. We know that not everybody's connecting online, and so that would be a way to reach out to folks to just have an easy to pick up flyer. We're going to do a lot of digital outreach. That's just the easiest way to reach the most people. And you see some of the venues will be going through the city website, the MindMixer site, the Rio Vision page, and we'll be talking about this a little bit later, but we've given up on MindMixer being the website that we need it to be. And so we will have a dedicated general plan website up. Our goal is to have it up before the March meetings. So we're working on that right now. We intend to be reaching out through the city water bills. We haven't yet understood exactly how we get in the queue for that. So we're working on that. Then media outlets, that whether that's the newspaper or the Trilogy magazine or whatever. And then hopefully folks will be logging into MindMixer and to the city website and giving us emails so that we can directly reach out to them. So those are different ways we're going to be reaching out to the community. Next slide. Last slide. There we go. So we're, as mentioned, this isn't really a static outreach effort. We're in phase one where we want to build awareness and education. We want people just to know that the general plan effort is going on and to understand what it is and how they can participate. Phase two is really starting. Honestly, it started with our last meeting when we as a group talked about what's important about Rio Vista, what makes Rio Vista the community that it is, what things would we really like to focus on in the general plan. And we'll be having a very similar discussion at the March meetings with the community. And that's going to really help to frame where we put our efforts. There's a whole bunch of topics that we have to address, but we want to really focus our efforts on those areas that most impact the community, and you and the community members will help guide us through that. Eventually we'll hit phase three where we start pushing out work product. That might be circulation diagrams, land use diagrams, and eventually it's going to be probably sections of the general plan itself. And then finally, as we're moving towards hearings, when this will all be adopted, the draft general plan will be available to the community. And then we'll be taking comments on that. So all of those are phases of outreach. Nick, next slide. Okay, the community meetings, we have scheduled them for the 24th and 26th. We spoke of this at the previous meeting. We think we have these times right, 5:30 to 7 on Thursday and 10 to 11:30 on Saturday. We have gotten a little bit of guidance from the city attorney and the city clerk. We would like for all of you to be able to observe the community meetings, and you're absolutely welcome to. We have to ask you not to participate or comment, because as soon as you start commenting and as soon as we have for the general plan working group, it becomes what's known as a Brown Act meeting. It's an official meeting, and for that we would have to notice it. We would have to go through some formal actions at the beginning and end of the meeting, and we really don't want the meeting to take on that formality. So we're asking that please come and watch, come and learn. But if you could just be observers rather than participants, it would allow us to keep the meeting less formal and more interactive with the community members. So
that includes the alternates as well, right?
Yes, I would ask for the alternates as well.
Okay.
Okay. So the real purpose of this meeting is to educate the community about the general plan update. We'll do a little bit of that. We want to do a lot of letting the community talk to us. And Nick's gonna go into that more, I think. Just 1 second. Yeah, so Nick, I think at this point, maybe you could move forward and take over.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so as we had discussed in our last general plan working group meeting, these public meetings will be by Zoom. We'll have that information available on the meeting flyer and on the website avenue, so people can click on that link to get to the meetings when they happen. Tonight, we'll go ahead and just go over the draft committee meeting flyer. I believe a draft was sent out to you earlier this week. See if you have any feedback, and then we'll discuss the purpose of the meeting, actually, which Paul just kind of went through, but we'll talk a little bit about the agenda and some of the things we'll be talking about in those 2 meetings. So this is the flyer that we created, and the time is different than we just said there. We're going to change that to 5:30 to 7, but for Thursday, the March 24th. But this just gives an overview of what the process is on the left, and ask people to join us for the first meeting to talk about the process and get their ideas. And then we'll have the Zoom links, inserted in there when they're ready to go. I believe we're going to be using our Interwest.
Hey, Nick, apologies, but I see Rick Dolk has his hand up. Rick, did you have a question you wanted to get in?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't have to cut in, but I'll just make it quick. So I did have that. I see that you have the MindMixer website address on there, and I think we've got that simplified now to where it's just realvista2045.com.
Yes, right now that does take you to MindMixer. That's right.
Yes, it does. Yeah, so we can shorten that. I think it'll just be simpler.
We'll talk a little bit more about how we'll use that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for catching that. We had another question from Judy.
Lisa?
This meeting is being recorded.
Did you say me, Judith? I'm wondering why it has to be by Zoom, the community meetings.
At the time when we were initially planning this, we were experiencing a rise in COVID due to the Omicron virus. It does now seem to be flattened out. And maybe everybody mute if you're not speaking. Mary Ellen, can everybody please mute if you're not speaking? Okay. Christine, can you mute everybody from your controls?
You know what? I see Mary.
Okay. The Omicron virus was surging at the time. We didn't have confidence that we would be able to safely meet in person. So we committed to this path. At this point, we're beyond the point where we can identify locations. We also have committed to certain tools that function through the Zoom meeting, including polling and breakout rooms. So for these meetings, we're past the point where we can shift reasonably into in-person meetings, but I'm confident now where we've gotten that going forward, we'll be able to hold in-person meetings. And at that point, we'll talk about going out into the community, either club, community rooms, schools, whatever you folks tell us is the appropriate venue. Well, it will be interesting to see if that is as effective, because Zoom is easy to jump on, it's easy to record, and we can host as many people as we like. So it'll be interesting to see how a follow-up in-person meeting goes and whether we feel like it's better or maybe not as productive, but that's the path forward for now. Lisa?
Thanks. I was just thinking that on the left-hand side in the section that says overview of the Rio Vista general plan update, I believe that first sentence doesn't need to be there. I think it actually dilutes the message. And I think what is in that first sentence is captured in the next two. Where your second sentence talks about it being an exciting opportunity, it feels to me that should at least be first, if you feel that that first sentence needs to be kept.
That is great input. And Nick and I were looking at some materials just a moment ago on another venue saying, do we really need that sentence? And so I think that that's good advice. And probably if you're not a planner, form, and character of a city doesn't mean quite as much. So thank you. Good input. I'm going to give it back to Nick, but do any other working group members have comments on the flyer, thoughts how we could make it even better?
You may just want to bold for questions or to RSVP, since it's in white on a gray scale there on the bottom. I don't know if that would, if you're expecting people to RSVP, it might be good to bold that for you.
Yeah, I agree. We can bold that. And people don't have to RSVP. It'd be nice if they, did send an email to Paul and say, I'm planning to attend, but we're not expecting them to have to do that to attend the meeting. You can not RSVP and still attend.
Nick recently conducted a committee meeting in San Dimas. How many people RSVP'd?
4 or 5 maybe.
And how many showed up?
75 people.
Yeah, so we'd love to have some idea. We're expecting somewhere between 5 and 75 people at these workshops. We just really don't know how many we'll be able to get to chime in. So anything we can do, and I think what I take away from both comments is simplify, make the most important information very prominent, and look for anything that we can cut out before we finalize this. So any other comments?
And I have a couple more things to note before we move on to the next slide about it. So as Paul mentioned earlier, this will be a half sheet. So on an 8.5 by 11, there'll be 2 of these. And so we can print those out and then we can cut them. And so you'll have 2 copies, and then those can be, as Paul mentioned, handed out, in several venues in downtown, at City Hall, library, other places. And then we can also have a PDF of this flyer that we can place on the MyMixer site, place on the city's project website, and on Facebook as well. And then if people do see this out and about, in downtown, and if they have their phones handy, they can scan that QR code in the bottom right-hand corner, and that'll take them to the MyMixer site or the project website actually by that point, probably. So that's it, and we'll be ready to finalize that tomorrow and get it ready to go. So for the community meetings, again, the purpose is to kick off the project with a brief overview of the general plan update, talk about the process of updating the plan, what is a general plan, discuss the schedule and timeline for the project, and then also to solicit input from the city's residents on the strengths of the city, opportunities, and the future of the city. We'll also have poll questions at the beginning of the meeting. That'll be pretty easy to do. You can just go on to after you enter the meeting, there'll be like 4 or 5 questions that we can have just to get people warmed up, thinking about Rio Vista and some of the notes that they'll want to share during the breakout rooms. But some questions we have that we're looking at are, how long have you lived in Rio Vista? And we'll give options, if you lived there 0 to 2 years, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, we'll just give a series of options that people can click on. What do you like most about living in Rio Vista? And then what are the best features of Rio Vista? So we'll give about a minute or 2 for people to take those questions, and then we'll display the results and we'll go over those before we get into the presentation. And that'll be probably about a 10-minute 10, 15-minute presentation to give an overview. Here's the draft agenda we have for the evening. These times obviously will change for the Saturday morning event, but we'll just have about 5 minutes for introduction to the city staff and consultant team. We'll run the poll questions there shortly after. We'll give an overview again of the plan process with a PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll have links in the side chat where people can click on the project webpage, the project fact sheet, and any other items we want to share with them we can have for the community to look at. And then we'll go right into the breakout groups about 35 minutes into the event. And then that'll last for about 30 minutes or so, where we'll go through the questions with the community that I'll share in just a moment. And then we'll come back together as a whole group, as a whole public meeting, to have each of the groups report back the top 3 to 5 ideas that they shared and learned in their group. And so that way everybody can kind of hear from the other breakout groups what was discussed in the other groups, and get a sense of what people are thinking and wanting to see in the city moving forward. And then we'll have about 5 to 10 minutes for next steps, where we're going with the process, when the next community meetings will be, and any closing remarks that we want to provide.
Nick, before you go on, it looks like Lisa has a question, and I think Mary Ellen had one too.
Go ahead, please.
Could we go back to the flyer really quick? I'm trying to get an idea of, I mean, that community meetings flyer, that's not on there because that's just for us to, so that what we're looking at here, the square is going to fill up half of an 8.5 by 11. So I would assume that the font is going to be bigger than what we see here, because that's pretty tiny for.
Yeah, it'll look better. Yeah, and
Okay.
I'll print it out. When we printed it out, we did a similar one recently for community meeting. We did the same format. We used the same size font. It worked well. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. We had another question too.
I did. First of all, my sound is still full of echo, so I'm having a hard time. Secondly, where am I? Or will there be extra copies of this to pick up somewhere so I can put them around?
We're going to be printing copies. Paul, maybe we can talk a little bit more about how many to print and how many would be feasible. The number. Marilyn, can you mute your sound? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, we would like a little bit of guidance about how many of these we should produce. We think that leaving 10 or 15 at any particular venue is probably enough. We might do that at 7 or 8 different venues. It seems like printing somewhere in the range of 100 to 150. But if you as a group are going to actively get out and hand them out, we can print more. We'll print just as many as you think will be productive. I have seen organizations sometimes print 500 of a flyer like this and use 50. So we just want to make sure we have enough, but not way too many. So any thoughts on how many flyers we will be able to use?
I would like to make a suggestion, though. A lot of stores will put them in their windows, and if you had a full sheet that would go in the window, I think that could get a lot of people's attention as opposed to half sheets in the window.
And I would like to put some at the 2 restaurants that we have. There's a lot of people coming.
Okay, so I think possibly even like an 11 by 17, we can mock up a separate one that's for Windows displays. That's easy, and that would not be as many. Art, I see your hand up also.
Just a little heads up. I just put out flyers for Rio Vision Town Hall that we're having in March. 30 is the number that we put out. I delivered to the store, all the stores downtown. And I delivered it to the diner and so on. And 30 is the number that we printed. And that's an 8.5 by 11 sheet. And they get posted in the banks everywhere.
So that was posted in a window, right?
A window, or some of the stores have bulletin boards inside, like the
But the-
Pizza Factory has a bulletin board inside that they'll put up flyers and that type of stuff.
But people didn't walk away with them.
That's correct.
Okay. Because the flyer we're imagining is a takeaway.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is 30 or so for posting in windows is about the right number.
That's correct.
Okay. And is the idea of takeaway flyers, does that seem like it's going to work in the community? Is that something we should do as well? Okay, so I'm going to throw out a number, maybe 150, 200. What do you think, folks? Is that enough? Is that too much? Not enough?
Art,
I saw,
Art has his hand up.
I'm out.
Probably would be a good starting point.
okay, this is one of those things where it's probably about the same price to do 300 as 200, but if we have to do 100 more, it's just, that's a different deal. So I'd like to err a little bit on the side. So maybe we'll go with 250 individual flyers and 30 window flyers. And then it's on you guys. We're gonna get these distributed out and ask that, you help us put them out in stores, take them out to community groups, Clubhouse, any place you can think of to put them. Nick, I think you're back up.
Okay, thank you. I think just one final note is I think we can take this design we have here and we can just create this as an 8.5 by 11 by itself for the ones we put up on the windows, but then we'll continue just to have the two on one 8.5 by 11 page. So that'll be easy to produce. And we also have the project fact sheets as well, if we think it's helpful to have that in some venues as well. Certainly in City Hall, we can have that maybe at the library, but we do have the project fact sheets we've created that we can also have handed out. So in terms of the breakout rooms, when we have those discussions, we're going to have the Interwest staff be the moderators of each of those breakout rooms. It'll be myself, Eunice M., who's here tonight, and then a few other of our Interwest colleagues to be moderating those sessions. And these are some of the questions that we'll be asking during that time. And these are pretty similar to what we were asking you last month. So you might see these as being pretty familiar. And we have about 30, 35 minutes to go through these questions. And that should be enough time to go through each of these and have the responses. We did use a whiteboard feature in that meeting that I just did, that Paul had mentioned, where we did a breakout room discussion, and that was really helpful, where we can actually have Post-it notes on the screen where we could be typing in the comments from each of the participants as they're being spoken, so that people can see what's being discussed for each of the questions. And just a bit, it's nice visually. People can see like the different comments and how they are with each other and kind of look at them. And then that helps us have a document that we can keep after the meeting and provide meeting notes from each of the breakout rooms. I think, Paul, you're going to talk on this slide.
Yeah, we spent some time looking at and learning about the MindMixer site. We still think it's going to be a really good tool for putting queries out to the community, surveys. There's some very nice features, and so we'll continue to utilize that. There was some requests that we make changes to the MindMixer site. it is a rather rigid platform. So things like the add it button, we can't change the name of the added button. So there were some specific things that the working group asked that we don't have control over. We do have control over the content. And so Nick and I are starting to look through this and making sure that whatever we put up is the most important language, the most important information. So we know that some of the members found the survey a little bit clunky. So we're trying to make the instructions about how to successfully do a survey as prominent as possible. So we'll continue to work with MindMixer. We think it's a good tool. But we also recognize it's not actually the full functioning website that any of us want. We've retained a web designer this is a woman who had worked at a former company with myself and some other folks at Interwest. And she actually has produced a number of general plan websites. And we're anticipating having a general plan website up and running before the March 24th meeting. So we're going to be moving real quick. And we would like to ask whether any members of the working group that would like to take a look at the website before it goes live. Asking for volunteers. Edwin and Lisa and Art had stepped forward already. So at this point, anyone, how about if we do this? Anybody, Nick, can you take the show down for a second? And anyone who would like to take a look at the website before it goes live, could you raise your hand and we'll just take down names? Rick, I've got you, Keith. Okay. Mary Ellen, I think I discovered the problem. You're logged in twice. Somehow, yeah, I'm seeing two pictures of you now. So I think that may be why we had a little feedback running. So I'm going to take down some names. I see Robbie, Rick, Lisa H, Keith. Did I miss anybody? I've got Robbie, Rick, Lisa H, and Keith.
And
Mary Ellen.
And Mary Ellen, great.
And Judith.
Judith, right, Judith.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. We'll once we have an 80% version before we've really finalized, we'll get an impromptu meeting of the group together to kick the tires, and you can give us a little coaching on how to really make it work best. So that's great. So Nick, you could pull that back up. The March 16th is what we're hoping for, to have a working draft at that point. And so somewhere on or about that date, we'll probably schedule a meeting. We'll send out a query to find out how schedules line up. I will say at the outset that if we're trying to coordinate schedules with 6 of you, we may not be able to find a time that works for everyone. We'll do our best to do that. And if we can, we'll get everybody on a meeting and have our web designer run through the site. Okay, Nick, next slide.
Okay, Paul, one last thing. Do you want to discuss the name of the site?
Oh, yeah. Well, Rick, you've secured RioVista2045.com, and we think that that's what we'd like to use for the website itself. So while we, at the moment we have that pointing to the, Emmett likes it. At the moment we have that pointing to the MindMixer site. The MindMixer would kind of become subordinate to the general plan website. It's still a tool we'll use. We'll still push people to it, but we anticipate using RioVista2045.com to be the general plan website. Makes sense?
That sounds good. Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds good.
Okay, great.
The name of the MyMixer site down to RioVista2045.mymixer.com. So that's lessened a little bit too already.
Yeah, and that will be used as a live link that can be clicked on. It will also be you can get there if you type it in, but we'll probably also use QR codes to get you to the Mind Mixer site as well. So we'll have different ways to push people to both sites. Okay, think that covers this. Next one. So we had a great discussion about Rio Vista and the community last month. We've also been poring over things like the RUDAC documents and some of the work that's been done in the community over the years. And what we're really trying to do is distill out big themes that we hear over and over. And right now we have a list of about 10 or so items, I think. Is that it? I don't really want to run through these individually now because we did have a good conversation, and chances are this list is going to change following the community meetings. But the importance is that we really, as we move through these community meetings, get to a point where the working group feels like we've really captured those most important topics for Rio Vista. The state will require that we address all of the mandated elements of the general plan. We will do that, but where we really put our energy is guided by what's most important to Rio Vista. And that's where these key themes are very helpful for us. We'll really make sure that we dig deeply into the topics that are most important. We'll certainly satisfy all the state requirements, but there may be portions of the general plan that, while required, are not truly near and dear to the hearts of the community. So that's what we're really trying to get to with these key themes. We heard it over and over, the small town character, the importance of downtown, Highway 12 congestion, people being able to get around on bike and foot. Where is the city going to expand? Where can we grow? Next slide, Nick. Economic development has been, noted over and over, including comments from the city council prior to this effort. The river, what a great asset. Of course, that's a very important feature of Rio Vista and very important in our planning activities. We heard about how great it is to have community events and to go to events that are local and you see your neighbors and bring the community together. Recreational opportunities, and a lot of that is youth, but also for visitors, for tourism, for adults. And then we did hear some interesting comments about programs for youth, whether it's just activities or arts programs or different ways to give the youth of Rio Vista opportunities. So all of those are key themes that we've heard so far. If anybody feels like, boy, there's something that we missed at this point, we'd be happy to hear from you now. If you want to mull this over and send Nick and I notes, we'd certainly welcome that too. Emmett?
Pretty sure I was not in the planning commission or a part of the planning commission when the storage facility that is now going to be on a piece of, I guess you could say, riverfront property off River Road was approved. But I get an earful from my wife every time we drive by there or talk about it, of why did the city approve a storage facility on a nice piece of riverfront property? Yeah, that's kind of neither here nor there in relation to this, but I guess it kind of ties in with maintaining and improving access to the waterfront.
So Emmett, you brought out one of the 800-pound gorillas that we're going to rescue, and that is that in years past, the decision was made to designate and zone that land for industrial uses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of decision that this group needs to think about. If ever there is a time to reconsider how that land would be used, this is it. You know, this 20-year update of the plan. So, and that's a hard one because you have businesses that are locating there, you have investment that's gone on, you may have expectations from property owners. But this is the time where we're steering the city, and that is probably the toughest land use issue to deal with in Rio Vista. It's one that I scratched my head about, but it's there. So
I figured that there was some reasoning behind it that, a long time ago that was decided to be industrial, but I just didn't know, and then it's, you think it's a little funny. We somehow got rid of the storage containers, and here we come with a storage facility right across the street overlooking the river. So it's 6 one, half dozen the other.
Lisa, what do you have for us?
I think there was just as part of like with the bicycle and the walking paths, et cetera, that there was this idea of being connected to nature green spaces. And I don't know how you have things listed that they might, that particular topic might be woven through a number of these, or if it needs to be called out separately, but it felt like with this idea of combating climate change or climate impacts, that green space nature provision, particularly because we are on the river and boundaried by agricultural land on the other side, that was a theme, at least that I thought I was hearing. So.
Great. Getting it down. Thank you. Judith?
Paul, you just said, I believe, that that we should be thinking about the land use in relation to what, I'm sorry, I didn't quite get your name, brought up about the new storage, but we can't change that now, can we?
Yes. The general plan establishes the land use vision for the city. I'm not going to pull up the general plan map right now, but I think you'd look at it and say, is that really where industrial belongs? We have land out towards the airport. We have the business park for a different type of uses. We have other lands. Is that really the place where we want to promote large contractors' yards, particularly when they have no particular relationship to the river? There is one contractor's yard that absolutely does work by barge, does work that is very river relevant. But this is the time to consider those decisions. Now, these are politically charged discussions because you will have property owners who anticipate uses and desire uses and expect to be able to use property in a certain way. So these are not discussions to take lightly to change the allowed use of property, but it is definitely within the city's authority.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yes, Mary Ellen.
Yeah, I would like to comment about that property because I was on the planning commission when that was passed. And there was no way we could really turn him down because the use fit what the plan said. And the only thing I can say about that is we did get a lot of specified good looking landscaping in front of that, so it should be nice looking. However, I'm totally in agreement with Mr. Holzlander, and the properties that are adjacent to that, are going to be way worse. Right now, there is a car repair place in there that is filled with broken down cars and RVs. It's one of the worst places around, and we're looking right over the beautiful river. And then next to that is where the Trigueros have that corner property that has been vacant and for lease for the last 20 years. And so I totally think that this is something that Rio Vista absolutely needs to include in their general plan update, how those properties are used.
Great.
Um,
Walt?
Get on the same theme. When it came to planning commission to vote yes or no for it, we had 4 planning commissioners there that evening. 2 voted for it, 2 voted against it. So the planning commission did not push it forward. The property owner appealed the decision to city council, and the city council at that time approved it because of the way it was zoned. So like Paul says, we have a great opportunity here to be able to change that. And I definitely, for one, am for changing that wherever possible, especially on the waterfront.
Great. And I just want you all to keep in mind that when land uses change and uses are existing, those existing uses are allowed to continue. There's a fancy planning term called legal non-conforming use. So even if you redesignate it, doesn't mean the land uses are going to change, but it does mean that no new uses, if industrial is a concern, no new industrial uses would be constructed. And the good news is that much of the property that's between River Road and St. Francis really doesn't have that much investment. They haven't built big, expensive buildings. They're really fairly low investment. So they're properties that if they could see a higher use, a bigger return, I think the property owners might be willing to consider relocation. But again, these are changes that occur over years, not over months. So any other comments on the big themes? No, Mary Ellen, did you? Okay, yes. Okay, so Nick, I think we can move on. So we've already, yeah, here we go. So the big thing that we're doing now is preparing for the March meetings. Really important because this is our big splash into the community to engage the community. This is when we're going to get some of the most important input to guide the general plan, is at these March meetings and any subsequent meetings. So your help as members of the community, getting the word out, that would be fantastic. Getting flyers out. We'll do everything we can through the social media venues. We'll produce the materials to help you do that, but anything that you can do to help move us along, that would be great. We're also, just so you're aware, Eunice and Nick and I have, I borrowed from City Hall 2 boxes of documents, historic documents, from everything from waterfront, specific plan planning to our UDAC to the old general plan, the existing general plan. We've been poring over these materials to start looking at what can we mine out of all the good past efforts that the community's invested in. So we'll be pulling that material out and starting to organize it. At the next meeting in April 7th, a big thing will be to recap what we learned from the community meetings. But we're also going to start looking at what the general plan will be. Currently, there's a number of elements. We think there could be some changes that would streamline the document and make it more relevant, maybe combine some elements, maybe create some new ones. But we want to start talking about what is the structure, and that really becomes the frame upon which we start to hang the text and the passages of the new general plan. So it's really, we start with the framework and then we start filling it out element by element, working with you and of course staff working very hard behind the scenes to produce the materials and do the analysis to prepare the elements. So that will be coming up on April 7th. One thing that I learned today, and since we won't have another chance for this announcement, parallel to the work that we're doing, the firm PlaceWorks is preparing a housing element update. They're also going to produce the safety element of the general plan. PlaceWorks is going to hold a couple of community meetings. We're anticipating that those will be on March 30th. We'll let you know, but if you can, in a light pencil that in. It's not a hard date yet, but the plan is to hold a meeting during the day and a meeting during the early evening for the housing elements specifically. And that will be not just Rio Vista, it will be for all of the communities, all the cities in the county that PlaceWorks is producing housing elements for. So that's, something to kind of lightly pencil in on your calendar, and then we'll confirm the date through email. But it looks like it will be March 30th, an 11 o'clock meeting and a 6 o'clock meeting, something like that. So Nick, where are we at? Are we kind of to the open discussion point?
Yeah, our presentation's done, so.
Great. Okay, why don't we pull down the show? So this is your time. Questions, comments, thoughts, ideas. We want to make sure you have an opportunity to just put whatever out there for our consideration. I see Art.
Yeah, a couple questions. If I recall, there was there's another group working on transportation. Is that correct? Is my memory correct that we have some other consultants working on transportation?
We do. PlaceWorks, the folks who are doing the housing element, are also doing the general plan EIR, Environmental Impact Report. Part of their team is a company named Farren Peers, which anyone who does our work knows Farren Peers is kind of the gold standard. They're a great firm. They're not just going to be helping with the environmental review, which is very important. We're engaged by the city council to do some visioning and some long-range planning, in no small part to think about options for how we deal with Highway 12. How can we make Highway 12 a more tolerable situation for the community? So they'll come up with near-term, mid-term, and long-term ideas for that, as well as really help us with some circulation planning. And then, of course, they'll also do the environmental review component, but that is because of changes in state law, the work that Farren Peers will do for the EIR is honestly not that interesting to us, because they don't look at traffic inside the city or bottlenecks or intersections. They look at something called vehicle miles traveled, which globally is really important, but to a person that lives in Rio Vista, it doesn't really get to what you care about in traffic. So, but Farren Peers is going to be working with us, and we'll be getting them engaged probably in about a month or two.
And the other question I had was, if I recall, we had a discussion about climate change, and that there was somebody that was going to be addressing climate change issues.
Yeah, the team on PlaceWorks, because that's going to be addressed through the safety element, is already pulling down data on climate change and how it will affect Rio Vista. So we'll see an analysis of will sea level rise affect Rio Vista, and typically the way you see that is the rising water and higher tides cause backups on bodies of water like Sacramento River. So even though we may be well above sea level, we can still be impacted by sea level rise because of the way it affects the river. So
well, in past times, there was an issue of salt water coming up the channel, the Sacramento River channel. And there was if I remember way back, there was a certain amount of water flow that Sacramento River has to have to keep the salt at bay. But if the sea level rises, that's going to push salt back up the river. And that's something that we need to be talking about.
I'll bring that to the attention of the PlaceWorks folks. That's a great comment that actually hadn't dawned on me. I was thinking total volume of water, not the constituent water. Great.
And While I have you, I'm available to distribute, so, keep me out, actually getting my exercise. And if you don't have me on the list to check the website, I'd certainly like to offer my opinion on the website, so.
You're now officially added, and Art, you actually offered to not only distribute, but print the flyers, but we're not going to take you up on that second one. We'll take care of that.
Okay, good. But
All right.
yes, let me know and I'll be glad to go around and say hi to everybody in town.
Great. Lisa?
I was wondering if there was a community or another general plan that you may know about as consultants that are similar to a community maybe of our size, or that has a major thoroughfare running through it, that you could recommend we take a look at, who have managed their growth well, or who have been able to, I don't know, receive compliments, or there haven't been major community complaints about what is laid down in their general plan. That might be something that I could pick up and read and sort of educate myself more even on the topic.
What I'd like to do is reach out to the folks at Fair and Piers. The first thoughts that come to mind for me is Highway 49 cuts through some Gold Country communities. And it's a similar similar situation of a relatively small community bisected by a highway. But not a perfect corollary. Fair and Piers probably will be able to bring up some more examples. So I'll ask them about that.
Thank you.
Judith?
That sounds very interesting to me. Could you put that in an email to everybody?
You
The
bet.
town that you find out about, I'd like to read about that also.
Absolutely.
Great.
And I think that there was two parts of that comment. One was a community that has similar circumstances and that has a great general plan treatment of it. I'm not sure we're going to get both of those. But what will help is you can look at and get a sense of maybe some solutions that have been tried. Okay, any other hands?
Just quickly, sort of on that same topic, in reading the old general plan, there seems to be a sphere of influence of areas that butt up against the city. Have those spheres of influence changed at all? Or would we be considering similar spheres in this general plan?
We will be having a discussion of the sphere of influence. The kind of boundaries of a city are its city limits, which are those incorporated lands within the city for which your decision makers are responsible. Then there's land outside of the city, but within what's called a sphere of influence. And those are lands that have been identified as appropriate for being added to the city. And our sphere of influence, I believe, is out of date. And so we will be looking at our sphere of influence. And that's not unusual, to be honest, is under state law, spheres of influence have to be updated every 5 years. So that will be part of that discussion where we talk about where will Rio Vista grow in the future? Do we have enough land within the sphere of influence to accommodate that growth? Do we have the right kinds of land to accommodate that growth? Are they located in a ways that will allow growth to expand logically? So that will be part of that discussion of where physically should Rio Vista look to grow in the next 20 years? Or, I guess part of the question is, should we be looking to grow? So we'll take that first question on, and then as we understand how much development we might expect, what it would take to house the natural growth of the community, we start to look at where it could go. So that will all be part of a land use discussion. Emmett?
Does anybody know at this point how much land is left for the city to grow into or toward because of the currently planned developments and or this land grab that seems to be going on by this outside corporation or whoever they are that's buying a lot of land around here.
If one were to look at the Rio Vista general plan diagram, you would think we have a whole bunch of vacant land available for development. When you look deeper, you realize some of it is constrained by leases for natural gas and therefore not truly available. Some is held by development interests who have shown no interest in doing anything for the last 20 years. So is it truly available? And then some of it is actually held by folks who want to do something. So when you sort it all out, we do in fact have some good vacant land to grow into with property owners who are interested in developing, but it's much less than your first glance at the map would indicate. So, and then there is, of course, the concern by, I don't recall the name of the group, but the massive land acquisitions that are occurring right now west of us, we're going to have to somehow get a handle on where those holdings are and find out if we're in fact getting boxed in, which may be coming. So that's a concern for sure.
The Flannery Group.
Thank you, the Flannery Group, yeah.
What's that name again, Lisa?
The Flannery Group.
Flannery, okay. Has anybody Googled them yet?
To no real avail is my
Yeah.
understanding. It's
Right, it's
difficult.
super
to
secret.
just avail, yes.
That's what I had heard, that rumors that they were, it was pretty clandestine, I guess you could say.
Well,
Yeah, we talked about outreach a little bit, and there's a couple time-sensitive issues with some of the outreach as far as print. The Beacon isn't so much a big obstacle, but Discover Rio Vista and obviously Trilogy Magazine has certain times tables and certain times when the magazines come out. So if those are going to be some of the, and I don't know what the timetables actually are. I mean, you have Trilogy at 45 to 60 days, but it might be wise to look at that right now, because if we want to get anything in there now for the future, it's not going to happen. Maybe Robbie can help with the Discover Rio Vista part of it.
that's a great point, Walton. We've been struggling a little bit because to write the article today that will be relevant in 45 to 60 days is challenging. So we do want to get into the print, and the newspaper is probably the much more accessible way to do that. We can do it much closer to the release date so that we can actually have a relevant message. But we have struggled a little bit. Nick, we do need to make sure that we get the deadlines for Discover Rio Vista and Trilogy Magazine, and just think about what we can do. And if it has to just be a general message, that still has a lot of value. So. All right, hands. I don't see any hands at the moment. All right, well, Chair, I think the meeting has run its course. Muted, Walt.
Sorry about that. We have item 4.1, the approval of the minutes from February 3rd.
Oh. Yeah.
Anybody have any comments or wants to make a motion to pass the minutes?
I looked at those today. I think there was just one thing that I noticed was the people that attended. It said Mary Ellen was on it, and I know that Mary Ellen had said that she wouldn't be able to make that meeting, so I don't believe that she was there. So we probably should fix that part. I can't remember if there was anybody else, but that was one that I noticed.
Thank you. Okay, so with the revision of the attendance at the last meeting, is everybody ready to go forward with the approval of the minutes? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hands.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you, everybody. And any more information items that we need to speak about?
No, we have a few takeaways. We'll be working with Fair and Peers to identify corollary communities. We will be digging into the publications, Discovery of Western Trilogy magazine. I'll make sure that we get out to you once we have a confirmed date for the housing element meeting that's anticipated for March 30th. And then we'll be working with a subset of you, which turns out to be most of you, on the website. So we really appreciate everybody making themselves available. And that will be somewhere around the 16th, I think we figured. So about 2 weeks out. So that, I believe, wraps it up. Sure.
Okay, if nobody has anything else that they need to speak about, so that will keep them up at night, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.
Well,
Bye.